And I realized that the whole time what I'd been doing was sort of loving and nurturing my left side, and I was starting to look back, and I was started tracing back on accounts where I started resenting my deficits, and getting, maybe even a little emotional about it and angry. And it dawned on me that every time that I got out and dug myself out of those little plateaus, those little ruts, is when I started pushing myself and forcing my left affected side to perform tasks that otherwise seemed impossible to me. So hanging from a pull-up bar and pulling up all my own body weight, and then jumping down on the ground and doing push-ups, and then going out on body surfing, playing my piano. I picked up the harmonica, cupping the harmonica with a microphone, and I played a couple live shows with my brother, and I was like, you know what, I fell in love with my deficits. I fell in love with my left side.
This is the Recovery After Stroke podcast with Bill Gassiamis, helping you navigate recovery after stroke.
Hello and welcome to the Recovery After Stroke podcast. If you are a stroke survivor with a story to share about your experience, come and join me on the show. The interviews are not scripted. You do not have to plan for them. All you need to do to qualify is be a stroke survivor or care for someone who is a stroke survivor, or you are one of the fabulous people that help other stroke survivors. Go to recoveryafterstroke.com/contact, fill out the form, and as soon as I receive your request, I will respond with more details on how you can choose a time that works for you and me to meet over Zoom. Now, in this episode 259 of the Recovery After Stroke podcast, I'm joined by Kevin Gocke, who experienced an ischemic stroke and a bleed due to complications in surgery. Recently, Kevin launched his book, Taken by Surprise, A Declaration of Perseverance. Kevin Gocke, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. Thank you for being here. Tell me a little bit about what happened to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So this happened back in 2009, October 21st, 2009. Kind of interesting. So I was getting ready to go surf. So I'm here in Southern California, and I was getting ready to go surf a pretty big swell that day with some good friends. And we went to pick up a friend that was going to come with us, who was working at a smoothie shop nearby. And I remember I was just looking up at the menu, and the whole room just sort of started warping, and my vision got really weird. That was my first signal. And I didn't really know what was going on. However, I'd had a similar experience a few weeks prior, where we think it might have been a TIA of sorts a few weeks prior, because it was pretty much the same feeling. So my friend kind of looked at me and he goes, "Hey, man, are you all right?" I said, "I think I'm all right." And I tried to brush it off. I was like, "This happened to me and it went away, but I don't know, this is really weird," and I went ahead and took a seat. So maybe I'll have a cup of water. I was really just trying to downplay it because I didn't want to think it was anything serious, although it was certainly a bizarre sensation. And my vision started really affecting me on the left side, and I had a visual field cut that was occurring. And then when he put the cup of water in front of me, I went to reach for it, and I'm left-handed normally. So I went to reach for it and missed the cup of water by about a foot. And so he knew something wasn't right. So he called 911, and it just so happened that there was an ambulance like in a nearby parking lot, picked me up and took me to the hospital. And I definitely, my whole left side sort of slumped into the chair at that point, and underwent a series of tests in the ER. And the weird thing is that I was beginning to sort of improve, but there was definitely something up. And then so upon further examination, they saw that there was a blockage in my brain. And so this is where it gets a little interesting. They went in to retrieve what was believed to be a clot. certainly something blocking blood flow in the occipital lobe, right hemisphere. And they went in to retrieve it with a tool. So they went up through my femoral vein. And unfortunately, when they went in, the artery it ruptured. So it started as an ischemic stroke and then turned into hemorrhagic shortly after. And that's sort of what made the whole thing life-threatening, and how I ended up in a coma for nearly a month. And I almost didn't make it on the table that day. I know that.
Mm-hmm.
And then there were several accounts throughout the series of the next few weeks where my brain swelling was just so severe that they weren't sure if I was going to make it, or luckily they didn't have to quite cap me. It was close several times, but anyhow, fought for my life for the better part of a month. And when I woke up, I had this full left side paralysis and left side visual field cut and a fun trach scar, and couldn't speak. Hooked up to more tubes than I can even remember, but that's sort of how it all happened. So I've spent the last 13 plus years, I guess. Yeah, in October it'll be 14 years, October 21st. Then, spent a majority of my adulthood, pretty much all of my adulthood, in the shoes of a stroke survivor. I'm 34 now, so
You turned 21 while you're in a coma.
That's right. Yeah, I forgot I'd mentioned that to you. So I turned 21 in a coma. I was pretty bummed about it. And when I woke up, I didn't really remember what had happened. I wasn't really sure why I was there. I thought I had fallen skateboarding or something. And anyway, even though my vision was all crossed up and it was really hard for me to focus, they had a calendar up on the wall, and I saw that my birthday had gone by. My birthday's November 8th. I think it was like the 17th. And I go, I was mouthing the words because I couldn't speak yet because of the trach. And they figured out I was trying to ask, hey, did my birthday go by? Like, did I miss it? And they were like, yeah, it was the big one, 21, and we were all excited about it. I'm the youngest in my family, so we were all pumped about it. And unfortunately, I was taking a long nap.
Couldn't even buy a beer legally.
No, I couldn't. Actually, it's funny. Did you happen to get the copy of my book? I wrote about that a little bit.
I didn't get the copy. I've been able to look into it, and I've done a little bit of research. We're going to talk about your book because it sounds like a great story. But
thank you.
The link you sent me didn't work exactly, but that's okay.
Okay.
So
I'll figure out. I'll get you something.
Yeah, that's all right, Kevin. So you turned 21, and now you actually can't drink a beer, even though you're legally allowed to drink a beer.
Oh yeah. Yep. Yeah, that was a bummer, not a huge drinker or anything like that, but I definitely enjoy a cold beer, especially, 21. I think everyone sort of looks forward to that.
Yeah.
What is it in Australia? Is it 21 as well, or is it 18?
18. Yeah. Not that anyone waits for 18, of course, but
no, very few do, I think.
Yeah. And not that we need an excuse to celebrate before then. We've definitely been on the beer way before 18, most of us anyway. And then interesting, by the time you get to 21, it's just a big event rather than a coming of age. The coming of age has already happened,
Right.
And then 21's just a big excuse to have another massive.
Yeah, just get everyone together and
yeah. Another session.
But it's fun, you get to pull out your ID, get carded, and it's official.
Yeah. The thing is, when we're 18, we're also allowed to get into pubs and clubs and venues of that sort of style where alcohol is served. So I'm not sure if that is something that you guys can do when you become 18, and what happens there. Are you able to attend venues where alcohol is served at 18, or do you have to wait till you're 21?
That's a good question. I think if I recall the law on that, yeah, 18, at least when I was 18, it might have even changed since then, but you can legally buy tobacco and stuff like that, and enlist in the military,
Mhm.
but that's about it. And yeah, I think if yeah, because I grew up playing shows, and before I was even 18, I was member in a band and played live keys and stuff. Anyway, a lot of them were 21 and over bars, and they would just put an X on my hand, and so I was basically tagged, don't serve this guy's a minor.
Interesting, interesting. So my son was also playing in a band when he was probably 14, and all the guys he was playing with were older than him and legally allowed to drink 18. They were all 18 or older. And they used to take him to gigs, but because they weren't legal guardians, they couldn't allow him to go into the band, into the show, into the venue, unless I was there and his mother was there. So my
Right.
my wife and I used to rock up at 14 till the age of 18 to watch them in their show, because he wouldn't be allowed entrance.
Oh, okay. So you had to kind of chauffeur him into the venue.
Yeah. So whether we
Okay.
liked whether we liked the music or not, we had no choice to hang out, and
So what
was
style of band was he in?
hardcore punk.
Oh, cool. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's my forte. Yeah.
yeah. So it was
Yeah.
not my forte. It's a little hard to get used
Yeah.
to, but anyway, we did 4 years of it, which was more than enough.
I know what you mean. It's a hard pill to swallow for the parents. And yeah, we got into a lot of European style heavy, speed thrash metal,
Yeah.
death metal, hardcore, all that. But I grew up on a lot of, my dad got me into classic rock. I grew up on Jimi Hendrix, Led
Mm,
Zeppelin,
mm,
The
mm.
Who, all the classics.
Yeah.
Then it transcended into Sex Pistols and a lot of punk rock, and Strung Out and all those good guys. So but then it just kept progressing. Everyone got into playing, and they're like, well, how nuts can we get with our instruments? Like
Yeah.
you know how fast can we, it's fun, it's a good time,
Yeah.
cool
It
culture
is.
too. Yeah,
It's a good way to let off some steam as well.
certainly. Oh yeah.
It's where I learned about the Ramones. I didn't know who the Ramones were until my son introduced me to the Ramones. And that was pretty cool to hear the Ramones and to
Oh yeah.
get to understand the roots of punk rock and how it
Sure.
emerged in the United States, at least.
Yeah. Yeah, I need to learn. I know about the Ramones and everything, but I haven't. They're one that sort of slipped through the cracks for me. I don't know how,
Yeah.
but yeah, I know they were pretty pivotal. They're pioneers in the world of punk. And
Yeah. And Henry Rollins was another one of those guys who was pretty pioneering in the day and did a lot of great sort of foundational work for the scene. And it's
right.
great to hear that crazy punk rock dude from the late 70s, early 80s as an adult. I think he's older than me now. Talk about life now and the way that he goes about life and how he's really creative and all that type of stuff. And it's interesting, even though it was hard to sit through 4 years of punk rock shows in the seedy clubs of Melbourne and being the oldest people in the room.
Yeah.
It was it's still good. We learned a bit out of it. I got some really awesome things out of it. And it was
Right.
also great to support my son at the shows.
100%. Oh, you're a good dad for that.
It was all
Yeah.
right. And tell me
Yeah.
about how the stroke and all that stuff affected that part of your life, the creative part of your life, and that part of your life where you got to be able to express yourself in that way.
Yeah. So that's a solid question. So I've been lucky. I've gotten a lot of dexterity back, as you can tell. I got really obsessive with my recovery pretty early on. I think a lot of it was just sort of being naive, not really realizing. I actually remember I was talking to my I think it was my speech pathologist, excuse me, and she's working with me mainly with my eyesight. And I was asking her, like, is this going to come back? And, she's like, we don't really know. For some people it does. For some people it really doesn't. I said, but the physical stuff, like I should be good. What, in like six months? Sound about right? Just completely over my head. I had no idea what I was dealing with. And I believed that. And I was kind of like, I got this in the bag. I know this how it affects everyone else, but not me. No way, And that was my attitude going into it. And, at the 6 month mark, being discharged from the hospital, I obviously was discharged much before that, but being home, and I think that's when it really sinks in, is once you're back in your element and you start kind of attempting these things. And I sat at my piano for the first time. You start navigating your way through your home, and you realize, like, oh yeah, this whole neurological damage world is a little bit, I might have underestimated this a little bit.
Most people do.
But having that said, I was fortunate with a really great support group, and I was able to kind of maintain that sort of, I don't know if stubbornness is the word, but just like, no, I think I can do it, and I think in a lot of ways it helped me sort of push down some barriers that ordinarily maybe would have held me back.
With self-belief barriers, what type?
Yeah, certainly. Excuse me, I'm trying to make sure this is all, are we good? Am I good?
Yeah.
Yeah, so went through, kind of like, if there's a will, there's a way kind of thing. I went through a series of not being able to do most things that I once, took for granted. Things that were really easy, piano, guitar, things like that. So I sat at my piano quite a bit. The tone was pretty bizarre. The arm wants to come up like this, and hard to put your hand on the keys. So my oldest brother, would come behind me and basically strap my elbows in like this, and then I'd force my hands to, I could do like octaves and things like that, but even that was pretty sloppy. So I not mastered, but I got pretty proficient at playing one-handed. So to answer your question in a very long-winded way, I can still play piano fairly well. I just play mainly with my right hand, and I hit some bass notes with my left hand, for therapy and for practice and things like that. I'm very at peace with where I've gotten at this point.
If you've had a stroke and you're in recovery, you'll know what a scary and confusing time it can be. You're likely to have a lot of questions going through your mind. Like, how long will it take to recover? Will I actually recover? What things should I avoid in case I make matters worse? Doctors will explain things, but obviously you've never had a stroke before. You probably don't know what questions to ask. If this is you, you may be missing out on doing things that could help speed up your recovery. If you're finding yourself in that situation, stop worrying and head to recoveryafterstroke.com, where you can download a guide that will help you. It's called 7 Questions to Ask Your Doctor About Your Stroke. These 7 questions are the ones Bill wished he'd asked when he was recovering from a stroke. They'll not only help you better understand your condition, they'll help you take a more active role in your recovery. Head to the website now, recoveryafterstroke.com, and download the guide. It's free.
But to answer your question fully about, what I did with my creative energy, is I turned it a lot into sort of my passion for working out and going on hikes and fitness and things like that, even camping, outdoors stuff. I still jump in the ocean and I body surf all the time. So that creative outlet that was once music, I thought to be something, you know, potentially professional one day, is now, still a passion of mine, but you know,
Not what it used to be.
it's not what it used to be.
Yeah,
No.
I get it. And with the body surfing, is that because standing up surfing is a little sketchy?
Yeah, it's funny. I was a big time body surfer before,
Uh-huh.
and then I was really into shortboarding right at the time of my accident, and I've actually paddled around on my shortboard. It feels pretty good. Um, I've been meaning to get a bigger board, and I haven't even attempted stand-up surfing, which is shame on me. That's actually on the agenda for this summer, because I'm surprised I haven't tried it yet. It's funny. I have my shortboard, so I'm 6'3". So my shortboard's 6'5". Um, but it's a little petite for me to paddle into a wave and try and stand up. It's kind of intimidating. And then my other board is a 9.0, which is a lot of board to be moving around.
Hmm.
So I've been meaning to get something in the middle, something that I could, practice on, maybe even like a foam board.
Hmm.
But yeah, body surfing, I just really love it. And I can go out on days that, it can be 3 feet, it can be head high, and I can still have a good time, get a little barrel. It's good exercise. Actually, it's great therapy,
Yeah,
swimming.
yeah. And it's
So,
interesting that you said that. It's because you can access the water more often than supposedly the surfers, because the surfers need a decent swell. Otherwise, yeah, it's a little bit sort of lonely,
yeah,
nothing happening, a bit boring.
yeah,
Uh,
100%. All you need
right?
is a pair of good fins. I love Vipers, and I'll just,
Yeah.
throw them on and catch anything.
That's really interesting. I'm wondering now whether or not a lot of people who were surfing previously have had a stroke, whether or not they've kind of flipped and gone to body surfing, to bodyboarding, because that'd be a great way to continue to get in the water without
Yeah,
worrying about getting on your feet too much,
totally.
and falling over all the time.
Yeah, bodyboarding's cool too. I've tried bodyboarding. Bodyboarding works pretty well. Um, the one thing that weirds me out about, with bodyboarding is I took off on a wave and I got a little, I think, I guess cocky, and I wasn't paying attention to where my left arm placement was. And when I went over the falls, I kind of impacted my shoulder and really strained all the tendons.
Hmm.
I wasn't quite prepared for that. But I'm sure I could work, you could work your way into it to where, the shoulder wouldn't be susceptible to injury or anything like that.
Yeah. So, how did you transition out of the stroke? What was the getting back to normal life like back then? Did you end up going to college? Did you go to work? How did all of that play out?
That's a great question. So I was so determined to go to music school that, you know, going back to traditional school didn't really seem all that appealing. I wasn't the greatest student. I actually did okay. I completed 2 years in community college, and then I was transferring over to music school right when everything happened. So I did actually go back. I attempted it, and I just didn't really know what I wanted to do. And subsequently, during that process, I had sort of been invited into the real estate world by a family friend. And I just kind of, was shadowing him on, what he was doing. And it was mainly more development projects and things like that. But I became good friends with the realtor and the broker on the deal. And it impressed me. I'm like, okay, how hard is this to do? And it seemed like something I could do, you know? It's not very physically demanding. I actually went back to the restaurant industry first, just to, kind of make ends meet a little bit, get a little bit of money in my pocket. But, I was 21 years old, and, luckily for me, I was living with my folks, so I wasn't freaking out about bills per se. So I had the freedom to go to real estate school and got my license, and then yeah, it's been a great profession. I actually still do it to this day. But the biggest thing for me was just getting everything back, and kind of reclaiming everything that I'd lost, which is it's a tall order, but I just continued to experiment with new things. I'm not sure if you're familiar with lion's mane mushrooms.
I am. Yeah. Tell me about it. A lot of people listening won't be familiar with them.
Sure. Yeah. Well, it's interesting. It's something that was brought to my attention way early on by a neurologist. I think there's some doctors that maybe think it's whatever. There's some very strong evidence pointing to that some of these mushroom compounds, lion's mane being one of them, reishi, cordyceps, chaga, are just incredible for the body, and lion's mane in particular, with the rerouting of neural pathways. So that's something that I started experimenting with early on, and it kind of opened my eyes to the whole natural supplement world. And just that kind of grew into like, oh, what's over here with nutrition? Maybe I should be. What's odd about it is that I didn't really have, other than my brothers and my family, and about it. I didn't really have anyone guiding me in the right direction with how I should be eating, how I should possibly be supplementing, and how I should be moving my body. I mean, outside of basic, routine therapy, which is important, but where I started to really, find myself, really breaking through certain plateaus, as they say, was really pushing myself outside of my comfort zone, and also feeding my body the things that I knew it needed. So for me, a diet rich in protein is extremely important. I mean, with all the muscle atrophy.
Yeah.
Okay, so what do muscles need? They need protein. In order for protein synthesis to occur, you need X amount, depending on the individual, obviously. But then I started playing around with essential amino acids, things like that, glutamine, really focused on hydration and blood health. I really got into, I take fish oils every day, and things I just think that ultimately really helped push me. And I mean, I still feel like I'm getting better, and it's almost 14 years. How about you?
Yeah. Look, I'm similar. I went down the path of just trying to take out of the diet things that are inflammatory in nature, figuring that my brain's already inflamed, and then what I didn't want to do was contribute to the inflammation and make it worse.
Right.
So for me, it was very focused on a large sort of amount of protein diet, as best quality as I could possibly afford and get, and then decreased my consumption of alcohol, dairy, particularly cow dairy, so dairy from cows, and then decreased my consumption of carbs, including flour, any gluten-based product, whether it's biscuits, pasta, bread, any of that stuff. And still to this day, I'm the same. And then, of course, alcohol. Stopped drinking alcohol. Didn't drink alcohol for the first 5 years, and I've maybe in the last 10 years, maybe I've had 10 glasses of alcohol, all up. And then dairy. So it was dairy, gluten, stopped drinking caffeine for a little while, because the main way I drank caffeine was with milk at the cafe. So that was kind of
Yeah.
introducing dairy. And then therefore, if I wanted to avoid dairy, I just inadvertently avoided caffeine. So I went on this particular diet for a very long time, did amazingly well, increased the sharpness in my mind, decreased the fatigue that stroke causes, lost weight, became more energized, just had a massive positive response to taking things out. And sugar was a huge one, specifically sugar, taking sugar out of my diet. Before the strokes, I used to drink Coke, was my big go-to. And just thinking that, 1 can a day or 2 cans a day being so active wasn't really impacting me in a negative way. But then when I stopped drinking it, especially after the stroke, my God, the difference to my ability to think clearly and to have a less deficit awareness, the ability for me to improve the way that I was rehabilitating my leg and my arm after brain surgery. Man, everything was just better. So
Right.
I took a big journey down that path. I've heard about lion's mane. I haven't really taken lion's mane, but when I read online about what it's meant to do, it's amazing. I mean, they are
Yeah.
known to support, according to an article from healthline.com, they protect against dementia. They could protect against dementia. They may help relieve symptoms of depression and anxiety. They may
Hmm.
speed they may speed up recovery from nervous system injuries. They may protect against ulcers and digestive tract uh, in the digestive tract.
Hmm.
Uh, they support reduction of heart disease. They help manage diabetes symptoms. They may help fight cancer. Okay, that's a big claim. They reduce inflammation and oxidative stress. And if anything that I've listed is important, it's reducing inflammation and oxidative stress. If you're reducing inflammation, you're supporting a positive decrease in the risk of all those things that I just mentioned: dementia, cancer, um,
Right.
all those things, all improve as heart disease. All those things improve if you can reduce inflammation and oxidative stress. And they boost the immune system. And really, the list goes on depending on the article that you're reading and watching.
Sure.
And they're pretty easy to obtain, lion's mane mushrooms. And they support neurological growth in new neural pathways. And that's pretty amazing and cool, which is exactly what stroke survivors need to do. They need to find new neural pathways to replace the ones that were interfered with or lost.
Exactly. But that's what was so appealing to me about it at the time. And, there's a lot of buzz about it now. This was, I can't claim that I've been, consuming lion's mane every day for
Mm,
the last 13 plus years. However, I did start about 13 years ago and
mm,
just always been mindful of it. And I've gotten it in my system as much as possible.
mm,
And as of the last several years, 5 years, I've taken it every day. Every day. And there's so many, like you said, it's not very hard to obtain. You can get it at local health food stores or wherever online.
yeah.
But yeah, all those things. They're it's so key. And it's now starting to, I feel like, come up more and more so now. And I'm involved in I just wrapped up a research study with a local university here, UCI Medical, here in Orange County. And they I asked them, I say, do you guys have any protocol or any research studies regarding certain supplements that are absolutely known to help speed up recovery? I mean, because the exercises and everything are extremely important.
Mm,
Absolutely. Um, but what you're consuming and what's going on internally is extremely important as well. Yeah, I'm not sure which one is. Probably it is a little bit more important, I'd say. Obviously you got to move, but
Yeah.
you
Well,
know
if people can't move uh,
hmm
because of the stroke, then
yeah, you might, yeah, that's
then what
exactly.
you consume is the next thing, right? Is the thing that becomes the most important. And I suppose for me, it's what you don't consume that becomes the most important. What you take out of the diet. That's the approach that I took. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, what are the 5 worst things that I could do to my body? Okay, well, smoke was one, but I stopped smoking pretty much the day of the first bleed. So
Yeah.
that was tick number one. So what's the worst thing you could do? You could drink alcohol, you could smoke, you could take drugs, um, and you could eat the wrong foods.
Right. Yeah.
And then you can have a bad um mindset. You can have a negative mindset. And
Which typically all those things lead you to a negative mindset, right?
right, they support it. They create
They
a negative
support it.
mindset. Yeah.
Hmm.
So my idea was what I'm going to do is create the right environment for recovery. And that's how I did it. As some people
Yeah.
don't realize, but what, and I didn't realize before my strokes, is I created the right environment for a stroke to actually occur. Now, it was a blood vessel that I was born with, it was a
Mhm.
bleed that occurred as a result of a faulty blood vessel, but I did nothing to stop that blood vessel from bleeding. I supported it, I gave it everything it needed to play up and to bleed. And for 37 years, it did nothing in my head. But then at some point, the conditions were right for it to respond in a negative way.
Mhm.
Is the way I see it. Now, somebody else might say it differently, and that's fine. So then I just took the opposite approach. Okay, what can I do now to create the right environment for my brain to heal? And that's simple question led me to 1,000 things that I could do. Some were impossible for me to follow up and actually implement. Others were really easy. And the ones that were really easy for me was what I was putting in my mouth, because it started at the supermarket. It started with what I put in my basket. If I
Mhm.
didn't put the stuff in the basket, it didn't come home. I didn't consume it. It was really simple.
Sure. Yeah. No, that's 100%. You're right on the money there. And it's funny because these are practices that sounds like you and I both have been implementing for a long time. How long ago was your stroke?
So it was in February 2012 was the first time. And
Like, okay, so yeah, just 3 years after mine. So
yeah,
it's been a better part of a decade, over a decade, right?
yeah, it has been. And what's cool about it is what you said is those studies are starting to now become available and proof in things that I
Right.
was doing that were considered weird or strange or unnecessary by my doctors or nutritionists or whoever I spoke to. Um,
Yeah.
it was the early days. I mean, it was only 10 years ago, but it was so long ago because there was no information available on that type of approach.
Zero practical. Yeah, you had to really like sift through the mud
Mm,
to find any kind. And then when you bring it up, yeah, to your doctor, and I mean, I remember one of my neurologists. I went through a few, but he just thumbed his nose at it and said it was
mm,
quackery.
mm.
Like, I don't know. And then my rehab doctor, we had a kind of a fun back and forth about it, and he was actually supportive of it, but he said, well, it's just stuff I didn't learn in med school, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I get into debates with other friends, and actually I'm working right now with a local community college at the adaptive kinesiology program, so I'm helping train people and helping them get fit again. That's my kind of my forte, is building back, not out of vanity, but it does help to feel fit.
Mm,
Not only do you function better, but especially for me, I had a girlfriend that had left me when everything happened, and I was a 21-year-old kid, and I'm kind of like, oh great, I feel defeated, disabled, all these things, these
Mm,
things I cannot control, and I've written about it. What are the things that I can control? What are the things I am capable of? Like you said, it's kind of like, what are the things I can remove from my diet that I know that are going to help me? Okay, same thing with your mind and with your actions. What are the negative actions and thoughts I can remove from my day to day? And all of a sudden, it just led me to this world of, well, I eat better, I feel better, I move my body, I feel better, I
mhm,
look better, I move better. All
mhm.
these things started sort of, it was like this domino effect. And then felt confident enough to go on a date again, and the rest is history.
Yeah. A
But
good
yeah,
a good amount of vanity, I think, is an amazing tool. I mean,
yeah,
I have to be honest, I'm vain, and not that I need to look like I did when I was 21, or I need to, have the same tone or whatever. But I do need to look in the mirror and like what I see in myself.
yeah.
And that's part of what motivates me. And when I follow my vanity and I allow myself um to give it what it wants, which is a certain outcome,
Hmm.
I do notice that then I'm lighter on my feet. That means I've better in my balance. That means I get less tired. That means I can go longer and further. Uh,
Hmm.
that means I can be more productive. Everything does improve, and it's vanity
Totally.
is not the key driver, but
No.
it's a really important part of the process, because if I was just doing it because I needed to be healthy and have a great brain, it wouldn't be enough for me personally. Just to be healthy and have enough brain power and all that kind of stuff is a real big motivator, but it's just lacking one little bit of extra motivation. And that for me, I think, is vanity. And I don't think I've ever been vain to the extent where I'm being,
Sorry about that. You know
yeah,
what? I
that's all right,
apologize. This thing was
bugging you.
slide, sliding off my lap. So is this okay like this?
Yeah, this is perfect. No problem. So
Okay.
I think with vanity, if you in the right dose and for the right reason, I think it's perfectly fine, and I don't mind it one bit.
Yeah, what's interesting about what you said, and it just dawned on me, and you're absolutely right. I never thought of it that way, but there is maybe a healthy amount of it, because when you think about it, like you're saying, if you're looking at your reflection in the mirror, and you're, especially for us, stroke survivors, I'm
Mhm,
constantly looking for imbalance and things like this. You kind
mhm,
of become accustomed to, not judging yourself, but evaluating and being an observer of, like, okay, this, my shoulder's dropping, or I have still some atrophy in my left, pectoral muscle. How do I even that out? Or,
mhm, mhm, mhm,
but you're evaluating your own physique for balance, because it's ultimately going to affect how you move around.
mhm.
And a lot of times, most of the time, you know the outer part is a reflection of what's going on the inside. So if you have an excess of adipose tissue, aka fat, around your midsection, that's usually an indication of inflammation and in the gut. And it's,
And it throws your center of balance out.
it totally does. You're carrying around extra weight, there's more blood pressure, there's all kinds of issues that come along with that. So it's unfortunate that sometimes, I think, people, fitness enthusiasts, or people who become obsessive about their health and working out and nutrition, has gotten some sort of bad rap, when in reality it's like, okay, take the overly judgmental vanity aspect out of it. You're taking care of your temple and
Mhm.
your vehicle that moves us around, and it is a direct display of what's happening internally,
Yeah,
you
and
know
it's actually not about in. It's not about fat shaming, or it's not about making people feel bad
no,
or
no,
anything
no,
like that. If I
no.
I've been heavier, and that was a phase that I was in, and that was a stage that I was in, and I didn't feel terrible about myself, but I just didn't feel efficient. I didn't feel able to operate at the right kind of level that I needed to operate at. So I did something about it. It was simply that. And I didn't particularly enjoy having to go buy clothes that didn't to replace the ones that didn't fit anymore. And I felt like
Right.
I didn't want to outsource that onto somebody else and make it somebody else's responsibility to make me feel good about myself. I'll do that myself. I'll find a way to solve my own problem and feel good about myself. Like I'll lead the charge and I'll take responsibility for that as well. And that's really what it was about for me. It was purely just me knowing that I couldn't be as slack as I was in the past because I have a deficit and I can't live with the deficit impact with how the deficit impacts my life because that means I'm not achieving all the things in my life that I want to achieve. I mean, I wouldn't be able to do podcasts the way that I'm doing them. I wouldn't be able to be present. I wouldn't be able to edit them and get them live and do one episode a week for the last 2 or 3 years. There's a lot of things that I'd be missing out on. And this stuff gives me joy and happiness, right? So
Yeah.
create the right foundation so joy and happiness emerges.
Yeah. No, I love it. And that's what you have to do. I mean, like what you've been doing, you're doing a great thing with this. I love it. I'm glad I found you on Spotify actually. And yeah, it's important to have guys like us sit down and have a discussion because being proactive, especially for, as long as we have, we've basically been our own guinea pigs in terms of experimenting with, I feel like a lab rat all the time with what works, what
Yes.
doesn't work. I've experimented with diet. I even went vegan for a little while just to
Yes.
see how that went. And it wasn't for me. I got really thin real quick, but no offense to those out there that it works for them. My biggest thing is, especially when it comes down to, reclaiming your life post trauma, is what you tend to figure out what works for you
Mm,
pretty quickly,
mm.
because what works for me, what works for you might not work quite as well for the next person. It probably will, I mean, I think there's sort of a general template or a framework
Mm.
that it's like, here's the general guideline on how to push your body, how to maybe eat, how to experiment with your recovery, but make it your own. You can
Yes.
always fine tune it. It's kind of like, like an old vintage car or something. It's like, here it is. If you want to let's soup it up, make it your own, paint it the color you want,
That's
make it
it.
sound the way you want. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And that's why I have a disclaimer at the end of the podcast. It says, don't take anything I say as gospel. Do your own research, get your own advice, speak to professionals. Absolutely. But
Yeah.
what's good is to express a different, our approach, which might be different to somebody else, just to make them think about that. And of course, that's how I came to be me and to take the path on in recovery that I did. I listened to other people's versions of their own recoveries in other podcasts about other things. And I picked a little bit from that guy, a little bit from that person, a little bit from that person. And I created
Yeah.
this little version of it that was my own. And yeah, it works for me. And sometimes it doesn't work for me. And sometimes I need to make a change and learn more about a particular thing and understand it better and then implement a different thing and then just try it and see what happens. Um,
Totally.
Overall, I've learnt a lot and I'm better for it. And that's probably the one of the key things about it. What's cool is that I have a lot of ideas, right? And then I've decided one day I need to express them in a way that's more succinct. So I put it in a book and I'm finishing my book and I'm writing a book. And when I think about me and the book that I'm going to be launching in a couple of months, I never believed. I always pinch myself and think back to the guy 10 or 11 years ago and think, oh my God, that guy never wrote a book. he never was a book guy. He never researched anything. He never wanted to share anything. Never wanted to express anything.
Yeah.
How did you get to write a book and get to the point of publishing it? What made you take? For me, was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. What made you take that journey? And by the way, for people listening and watching, the book's called "Taken by Surprise: A Declaration of Perseverance."
That's it. Yeah, you know what? Actually, that's why I scooted back over here. Here's a
Yes.
picture of it here. I'm not sure if you're able to find it. Yeah, so basically everything that I wrote about's in here. What pushed me to write it? So I'd actually, I think in 2015, I had gotten pretty serious about it and drafted up an outline and kind of had some bullet points. And gosh, that was 2015, so that was what, 8 years ago. It's 26. So I'd had some experience, but I also was still, I felt like a kid. And what halted me and why it sat on the back burner for the last 8 years is I was like, I don't, no, again, I love the fact that people, write books about their trauma and their experience. But at the time in 2015, I felt like I didn't really have a whole lot to contribute. I had a relatively impressive recovery at that point, given the level of brain trauma and the scans had shown, right? But it's kind of like, well, this happened to me. I can write in depth about my experience, but what I wanted to do with my book was show the how. Not just this crazy thing happened to me. This stroke happened to a young 20-year-old kid who was seemingly fine and totally healthy and almost took his life. But how I put the broken pieces of the puzzle back together again was an important aspect of the book that I just didn't quite have figured out. And a lot of things had kind of transpired, 2020 with the whole lockdown and COVID and everything, and I was busy with real estate, and work has been good to me in that department. But I started just kind of questioning my purpose a little bit. And that's fine. It's my purpose to do this. I mean, I live in a beautiful area, and I met my girlfriend at the time, who's now wife. We just got married in October, and just a lot of things sort of transpired. I'm kind of like, started thinking a lot about my future, and I kept bumping into other stroke survivors at the gym, for instance. And I'd walk up, and I've made friends with two of them. There's only about 2 people in the gym, and younger guys. I thought they were my age. Turns out they were a little older, and about 40, but they'd had theirs, back in their 30s. And I'm like, hey, what if I show you something? They, kind of taken back at first, and I'm like, I went through the same thing. And kind of like, whoa, really? And I'm like, yeah, I did. But I can show you, what I did to help me get to where I'm at now. If you don't mind, I can show you how to maybe get some resistance on that arm without, because what I noticed for this one particular gentleman is he was just working out his non-affected side.
Mm-hmm.
And it just was driving me crazy. And I was like, there's a way to do that, and it's gonna be uncomfortable and it's probably gonna hurt. But I showed him, I said, we're gonna go, like, there's no ego here. Put a 5-pound weight, not even, I think it was like a 2-pound weight, I just start working it. And he's thanked me since. And that's kind of what drove me to get involved with this adapted kinesiology program. So anyway, I'm sorry, and I kind of went on a tangent.
It's all good.
My point is, these things kept happening, and I felt like there were these signs, and I get invited to do another research study. I'm like, I keep getting pulled back into this world of stroke recovery. And, plenty of people have said, oh, that I ought to write a book and things like this. And it's such a rare scenario. And my recovery's been what it's been, which is pretty good, I guess. So I finally put ink to paper, and I redid my outline. I trashed the old one because a lot had transpired since then, and I have a lot more to say, a lot more life experience. So it kind of turned into somewhat of a blueprint, as I called it. And it's kind of like, this is my blueprint. I hope it serves you well if you follow along. That's the cool thing about it is, I think that if you take, the words in there for what it's worth, these are the mistakes I made. These are the things that really served me poorly. And then here's a lot of the things that served me well. And it goes everything from, lifestyle choices to mindset and
Beautiful.
everything in between,
So what I was missing when I was going through this was that book, right? Because I was looking for a blueprint from other people who weren't stroke survivors, and it was the best I could do. And it worked. It still worked, but it kind of always didn't feel quite the blueprint for me, or even though there was a lot of amazing information there. And then what I
Sure.
found was I created my own blueprint. And like your book, mine has taken 2 years to develop and 2 years to write. And I wasn't writing for 2 years solid. It's
Yeah.
my stroke journey. My brain wouldn't allow me to write for a lots of time, like a good chunk of
Right.
time, sometimes 2 months, 6 weeks, whatever. So I just didn't write. I couldn't. But when the idea came up, at around about 2015. I started to get the feedback from people that they thought that stroke was the best thing that happened to them. And I thought that stroke was the best thing that happened to me. And then I was like, okay, how did we get there? I wonder if there's any similarities in how we got there. And it turns out that there was. And that's kind of what
Right.
the book is, right? Becomes a blueprint. Now,
Yeah.
what a book. Your book, same thing. It's a blueprint. And if I had it earlier, I would have felt less alone in my recovery journey, especially in the early days, thinking that I don't know anyone that has been through something like this, or nobody understands me, or what happens on the
Yeah.
next phase.
Mhm.
You've got a real good grasp of that, and you've seemed to have put it into a beautiful 7 chapters that's about 130 pages long. And when I'm reading through the chapters, the one that stands out to me the most, the one that kind of made me take a second look, was falling in love with your injury. Now,
Oh
that's an
yeah.
interesting concept.
Yeah.
Explain to me what that is all about, because most people dislike their deficits and their injury, and it
Sure.
really bugs the heck out of them, right? So, how do
Yeah.
you fall in love with your injury?
So that's a great question. So just to step back just a little bit, it's funny you say it's taken you about 2 years to finish your book. I got really serious about it, after COVID around 2021. I was like, okay, I need to finally do this thing. And I started jotting down all my weird manifestos, my crazy thoughts, and you know, as I started jotting down and really putting, I keep saying this, ink to paper, but it's important. I think writing is extremely important. It was extra annoying for me is that I'm normally left-handed. So that's one of the things, I can, I can do 30 pull-ups, but I still can't pick up a pen. The dexterity is a little off. So I've just learned to write with my right hand.
Uh-huh.
So anyway, I'm writing this outline with my right hand, and I kind of had a moment where I was a little pissed off, excuse my French there,
Oh, good.
a little upset rather with my left hand, and I was just like writing all this stuff. I wasn't really upset with my left hand. It was just kind of frustration. And I started thinking about, how far I've come, and actually what I've been able to retrain my left hand, my left arm, my whole left side to do, what I've been able to accomplish since my stroke, brain injury and everything. And I realized that the whole time what I'd been doing was sort of loving and nurturing my left side, and I was starting to look back, and I was started tracing back on accounts where I started resenting my deficits, and getting, maybe even a little emotional about it and angry. And it dawned on me that every time that I got out and dug myself out of those little plateaus, those little ruts, is when I started pushing myself and forcing my left affected side to perform tasks that otherwise seemed impossible to me. So hanging from a pull-up bar and pulling up all my own body weight, and then jumping down on the ground and doing push-ups, and then going out on body surfing, playing my piano. I picked up the harmonica, cupping the harmonica with a microphone, and I played a couple live shows with my brother, and kind of was like, what, I fell in love with my deficits. I fell in love with my left side. I mean, because, and the concept is, when you truly fall in love with your injury and you feed it everything that it needs, the positivity, the light, the love, and the strength and the courage to break through these seemingly impossible barriers, that's the only way, literally the only way you can progress, through. If you don't truly fall in love with your injury, and you don't own it and show it respect that it deserves, it's kind of like a relationship, like I think you probably wrote or read about that, whether it be professional or intimate or whatever, a friendship. If you start trashing that relationship and feeding it, negativity and hate and anything but respect and love and encouragement, then it falls apart. It's not built for longevity. It's not gonna serve anything or anyone very well. So anyway, I know
Yeah.
it was sort of a long response, but
No, it's a beautiful response. It's just awesome. It's a concept that people are going to find maybe strange, some people, and it'll make them think. And that's it. If it makes them think and they can maybe find the silver lining,
mhm.
then I think that's cool. That's hopefully what happens. They find a silver lining and then they think about things differently. And if they think about that differently, then they might think about something else differently. And then that might change their whole world. And it's a little seed. And I think that's where it starts. It starts with
Yeah, yeah,
having weird, strange ways to look at an injury and
totally.
uncommon ways. And I think that's awesome to describe that to somebody who might be, let's face it, struggling with their deficits, and that's okay.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, I appreciate you picking up on that. That was actually one of my favorite sections in the book, and something that yeah, I'm glad you picked up on that. That's cool. That's your favorite part so far.
It is. I'm definitely planning on getting a copy and reading it through. I think there's a lot to learn from it. And like I said, these books are the books that I needed when I was recovering. I'm planning on compiling a list of books written by stroke survivors, for stroke survivors, and putting it on my website so that I can
Oh,
easily just
cool.
send it to people and go, hey,
Yeah,
here are the books from stroke survivors, for stroke survivors. These are the people that I've interviewed. And then hopefully that makes a massive difference uh, to people that are early on in their journey, like we were, and were in desperate need of content and
yeah,
ideas and new ways to look at things. As
Right.
we
I was,
wrap up,
oh,
go
yeah.
go.
Oh, I was just gonna say, to back up what you were saying there, and my thanks to you is with what you're doing here. Same with, with regards to the book, like what you're saying, you wish you'd had something like that back then. That's something I'd mentioned in there is, with all humility, I wish I had a tool like that in my darkest hour and someone to relate to, or, I'm not alone. Oh, here's how this person did it, and maybe this will work for me. So
Yeah,
I
perfect.
appreciate that. Thank you. And this is great too, what you're doing.
Yeah, my pleasure. As we wrap up, I just want to ask a couple of questions to
Sure.
leave some wisdom to the people listening. Not that we already haven't, we definitely have. But what
Yeah.
has stroke taught you?
Oh, what hasn't it taught me? You know, to put it simply is, I think everyone, including myself, even still since stroke, there's a level of taking certain things, maybe people or life in general, for granted. And what stroke has taught me is we never really realize how much we're in our own bodies until there's something wrong with it.
Wow.
And that's something that really really hit home for me. A friend of mine told me that, and it resonated because it was when my book, I was finally done with it. He's kind of like, yeah, I was kind of reading, kind of studying you a little bit. It's like, and I'm not sure if that's exactly how he phrased it. That's how I kind of picked up on it. And if that's one thing I could say is, yeah, we really don't realize how much we're stuck with ourselves until there's something wrong with it. How much we're in our bodies and our minds until there's something, a glitch, so to speak. So make it a good time, you know, eat the right things, hang out with the right people, make the right choices. I mean, the list goes on. All those cheesy cliches, that a lot of people like to thumb their nose at, maybe they think, I don't know, they're too tough, or they're not, it's too soft to think that way. I mean, anyone, as you know, who's gone through what we've gone through, it takes a certain level of grit to establish a life for yourself that you feel is well lived and worth living. So I guess that's what it's taught me is, and how to be tough and how to be happy and how to be grateful.
Yeah, brilliant, man.
How
I
about
couldn't,
yourself?
it sounds like you're talking about perseverance, which is also a part of your book. It's also one of your chapters. Perseverance is,
Yeah, the subtitle as well. Yeah.
yeah, perseverance is kind of one of the things that I think I've learned. And, I'd never done a 4-year project ever on anything before. So to persevere through the idea of the book, to persevere through it, putting it in dot points and it looking stupid and ridiculous and, you know, nonsensical, to persevere through that and then to start to develop it and to find a way to actually tell the story that was not just me bragging about myself or telling, to bring the people in, to interview them,
Right.
to decipher what they
Yeah.
said, to find the pattern, to outline it, to turn it into a blueprint, um, and then to sit down and actually write it once I've done the 2 years of, we'll call it foundational work or research, and then to write it. It's perseverance. It's just to continue to push towards the solution, whatever the solution is, to persevere towards the solution. And you might never get there, but what you do is you always pick up some amazing things along the way, some things that
Yeah.
improved your life emotionally, psychologically, physically. So it's really good. That's me. Perseverance. Maybe next week, if you ask me, it's a different answer. But at the moment, I think it's perseverance, and it goes along with what you say. The other
Love
thing I wanted to ask you was, what would you say to other stroke survivors? You come across somebody, they're a stroke survivor, they're early on in their journey. What do you say to them?
Plateaus are a myth.
Nice.
That's really a big thing for me. Plateaus are a myth. Don't let anyone, no matter how well established the doctor or PT or therapist. I know that there's a ton of doctors and therapists that would agree that plateaus are a myth. But in my tenure, I've experienced a handful that really put the fear of God into me and kind of made me believe that it was like, okay, well, here I am at year 5. This is it. Nope, I'm doing things that I couldn't even do a year ago. It just keeps getting better. As long as you're pushing yourself. Plateaus are a myth.
Yeah, I think plateaus are a word that are used by insurance companies to find an excuse to stop supporting people on their road to recovery.
Interesting. Yeah.
Really, that's the only thing
I
that
never even
is.
thought about that. That's a spooky but a great point.
It's a load of bullshit. The people that I
Yeah.
coach who tell me that's a pattern that I've noticed in the people that I coach, that they tell me that what they
We
hear
did all
is,
we can. Now you're on your own. This is it.
yeah,
That's what you get.
they hear the word plateau usually from their therapist, and then after they've heard the word plateau and the therapist has reported that, then the funding gets cut. So it's just a mechanism to
Yeah.
justify cutting somebody's support. So if you can, in any way, mm, uh, explain to your therapist to never use the word plateau in a report, then you've got half a chance of continuing the funding and the therapy.
Definitely. Because it's so important for a lot of individuals out there, and you need that support still. You need that level of therapy, before you can become your own therapist, your own physical therapist.
Yeah,
It's a lot of work to get there.
it is. Hey, where can people get in touch with you if they wanted to learn more about you? Where would they go?
Yeah. So my name, just Kevin Gocke. It's right here I'm not sure if people were listening, but spelled like that on the book there. There's
Gocke.
Kevin, and then Gocke. And I'm not trying to overly promote this thing. It's right there. But Instagram, I'm pretty active on there. I actually recently started a YouTube channel. There are my links in my bio on both Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. Actually, I succumbed to the TikTok world, which was not something I was too thrilled about, but it's actually been pretty cool. I've enjoyed it, and I've been able to do some workout videos on there and share some tips, and actually reach a much broader audience, because the Instagram and YouTube is a little bit more limiting.
Yeah.
But in there, you'll find a link in bio. It'll actually take you to my link tree, where you can also get onto Amazon and find copies of the book and things like that. There's a lot of kind of nuggets of wisdom in there, which is I hope as many people as possible can learn from it. Again, like you said earlier, and I say this very humbly, but I wish I had someone like myself to talk to earlier on, and then like yourself as well. So that's what the book's all about. But yeah, as far as finding me, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok.
I will have all the links on the show notes anyhow. So for
Cool.
anyone who can't remember that, just go to the recoveryafterstroke.com/episodes, find Kevin's interview, and you'll be able to get all of the contacts and also the contact or the link to the Amazon page for the book. Kevin, thanks so much for reaching out, man. I really appreciate it. I enjoyed our
Thanks for
chat,
that.
and I wish you well with the book launch and the book sales.
Absolutely. And thank you, Bill, so much for having me. It's been a pleasure. It's great talking to you.
Thanks for joining us on today's episode. To learn more about my guests, including links to their social media and other pages, and to download a full transcript of the entire interview, please go to recoveryafterstroke.com/episodes. If you would like to support the show, the best way to do it is to leave a 5-star review and a few words about what the show means to you. It'll make it easier for other stroke survivors looking for this kind of content and feeling alone in their recovery journey to feel better about the fact that there's other people that are going through what they've been through, that are overcoming what they've been through, and it's going to inspire and give hope and make stroke recovery better. So please do go along to iTunes and Spotify. If you are watching on YouTube, comment below the video, like the episode, and to get future notifications, subscribe to the show on the platform of your choice. Thank you for being here and listening. I really appreciate you. See you on the next episode.
Importantly, we present many podcasts designed to give you an insight and understanding into the experiences of other individuals. Opinions and treatment protocols discussed during any podcast are the individual's own experience, and we do not necessarily share the same opinion, nor do we recommend any treatment protocol discussed. All content on this website and any linked blog, podcast, or video material controlled this website or content is created and produced for informational purposes only and is largely based on the personal experience of Bill Gocke. The content is intended to complement your medical treatment and support healing. It is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice and should not be relied on as health advice. The information is general and may not be suitable for your personal injuries, circumstances, or health objectives. Do not use our content as a standalone resource to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease for therapeutic purposes or as a substitute for the advice of a health professional. Never delay seeking advice or disregard the advice of a medical professional, your doctor, or your rehabilitation program based on our content. If you have any questions or concerns about your health or medical condition, please seek guidance from a doctor or other medical professional. If you are experiencing a health emergency or think you might be, call 000 if in Australia, or your local emergency number immediately for emergency assistance, or go to the nearest hospital emergency department. Medical information changes constantly. While we aim to provide current, quality information in our content, we do not provide any guarantees and assume no legal liability or responsibility for the accuracy, currency, or completeness of the content. If you choose to rely on any information within our content, you do so solely at your own risk. We are careful with links we provide. However, third-party links from our website are followed at your own risk, and we are not responsible for any information you find there.